Good morning. The real Alex Kim. I think you can request speakership, or I can set you as a co-host. Let's try that. There you go.
Oh, perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Top of the morning to you.
Yes, good morning. Good morning. 9 a.m. on the dot today.
Right. You're an earlier riser than I.
Yeah, I mean, today I woke up a bit later, but yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this is our first Binance Square introduction. We'll be doing a lot more of these. I think I see some folks maybe from Vietnam. Um, I got to figure out how to do tips. There's a function to add coins here. We'll have to do that next time. Um, we'll be having another session after this for those joining, and we definitely have Zeta incentives for that. Hi, Lily. So yeah, this is our first session. It'll probably be a small group, but for the record, we want to make a formal introduction of ZetaChain to Binance Square. I'm Jonathan on the community side, and I'm joined by Alex on ecosystem, and we'll go through the high level of ZetaChain, and of course, you can help support Zeta in the vote to list campaign that Binance is running. And then maybe we can take some questions from you guys if you have in the chat room, or we can bring you to the stage. Alex, you want to give a quick intro on your background?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to be here today. Good morning, good night to wherever you are. Yeah, doing ecosystem here at ZetaChain. Previous to this was working with BNB chain for quite a bit. Before that, been in the crypto space for a total of about maybe 8 years now. Just working across different startups, some that failed, some that did quite well. Um, and that led me all to where I am today. Very excited to be here.
Cool. So yeah, for those listening not familiar with ZetaChain, maybe you could give the quick 101 on what is ZetaChain, and specifically, like, there's so many blockchains out there. So how is this different from other L1s or 2s, rollups?
For sure. So I won't go too much into technicals, but think of ZetaChain as this airport where anyone from any country, from any region can join this airport. From this airport, we're connected to all these different chains, which are like the airport terminals of different countries, right? And we can send anything to and from this airport to another without any sort of lag, and it's completely native. So we'll send people, luggage. In our case, we'll send smart contract data, anything chain to chain, all through ZetaChain. So if you think of us, and when you compare us to different layer ones, layer twos, and even rollups, I'd actually say that we're not even competitive to any of them. Rather, we can integrate any of them. We can integrate any L1, L2, and even rollups to enable smart contracts, to enable messaging between all these different blockchains that we're live on. And that's our main differentiator here. We're able to connect to Bitcoin, native Bitcoin, Solana, major EVM chains, and users can use any asset from any wallet natively on ZetaChain without having to switch networks or go through any bridging process.
Cool. Maybe just playing with that analogy more, you mentioned ZetaChain's like an airport. Um, Different airports have different requirements, and like there's the TSA in the US. Other countries have other specializations. So like if you think of other countries as blockchains, are you kind of saying ZetaChain is um, sort of like a standard to access all countries and airports?
Absolutely.
Cool, nice. Um, okay, so yeah, blockchains. Most of the modern blockchains today are programmable and smart contract capable. Um, what kinds of apps can you build on ZetaChain?
So anyone can build any app on ZetaChain. I think of us as like Microsoft, and as long as you have the capability to, you can build out really anything that you want on ZetaChain. because of the smart contract layer. But I would say the main differentiator that you can build on ZetaChain are these universal apps. So universal apps on ZetaChain are pretty much singular apps, singular app deployments that allow users to connect any wallet. So you can connect your Bitcoin wallet, you can connect your Solana wallet, EVM wallet, in the future Ton and Sui as well. And you can use your native assets to interact and use ZetaChain apps as is. So some of the applications that we currently have live is our DEX. We have Beam DEX. Um, you can connect your Bitcoin wallet, any wallet, and really do swaps between native Bitcoin to any asset on EVM, any asset on Solana without any bridging or wrapping. And we have Amana, which is our yield aggregator. You're able to connect your wallet and deposit into any money market or liquidity pool on the DEXs without any bridging or wrapping, and you can use it from any wallet. So if you have ETH on ETH, you can deposit into a money market on BNB. Simple as that. So the entire experience is to really abstract away from the users the entire cumbersome of bridging and doing all these different multi-token swaps, etc., and just unifying that entire experience to a one single click product UI UX.
Very cool. Um, I brought MD to the stage. We could make this more interesting. MD, you have a question for us? Or you just want to be a speaker? Cool.
Nice.
So yeah, you can build anything on ZetaChain. Familiar Solidity programming language, so it's just like building on Ethereum. The benefit is that you have access to all other chains, BNB chain, even something like Bitcoin. Um, so thinking about like the user experience, and today using different blockchains requires a lot of manual bridging steps, and sometimes you don't know what solutions you're using, uh, so it can get kind of funky and confusing. Uh, how is ZetaChain helping the end user experience?
Sure. So right now, the current crypto experience is terrible. I don't care what anyone says. Um, the crypto product UI UX has not changed at all since when I first joined, like 7, 8 years ago. It's still the same tiring process. Um, so ZetaChain really solves the entire problem, at least from what I've seen. So the current UI UX of crypto is withdrawing from a SEX. Then, if you want to bridge across some tokens, you have to go through a bridge, you have to go through switching networks, and you have to find different dexes on each ecosystem. It's actually the most tiring experience I've ever had in my life. And by the time that happens, something always changes in crypto. And the overall product experience is terrible as well. I mean, there are so many really big dApps that have multi-chain deployments across maybe two chains. But because there's so much user fragmentation and liquidity fragmentation, the other chain deployments have very little to no liquidity. So everyone just ends up using the main chain deployment anyway. So what's the entire point of doing a whole different chain deployment? So ZetaChain really fixes this entire product UI UX where it addresses that problem for developers. Hey, we want to access users from all these different chains, but we risk having to do individual smart contract deployments. That takes time. It takes about a month or two to do it. Then you have to find liquidity for each different chain that you're live on. We solve that problem for the developers. Just deploy once, and any user from any of these chains can use their native assets to play with your dApp, to use your dApp as is, without switching networks, without user fragmentation, without liquidity fragmentation. So it solves that entire problem where you don't have to go through all these troublesome steps to access other ecosystems or other apps on different ecosystems. Rather, you could just deploy everything on ZetaChain once.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you deploy on ZetaChain once, and then you have access to users and liquidity on the connected chains. Can you talk more about this idea of like unifying liquidity? Because a lot of DeFi protocols now and other interoperability solutions, they say that they unify all the tokens and stuff, but you look under the hood and there's still fragmentation. Uh, Help us understand that.
Yeah, so whenever you do a token swap on ZetaChain, there's ZRC20 assets, ZRC20 tokens. So those ERC20 tokens are the only tokens that you need on ZetaChain to do any sort of cross-chain or interoperability functions, swaps, deposits, withdrawals, anything. Those are the only tokens that you need. And if you were to do a swap from, let's say, native Bitcoin to ETH on ZetaChain through our DEX, it pretty much swaps through a BTC ETH pool. And that's it. And the only liquidity that you need for that pool for that specific route is just ZRC20 Bitcoin against ZRC20 ETH. That's it, and it swaps through there. And the user gets native ETH in their EVM wallet, and native Bitcoin is withdrawn from their native Bitcoin wallet. Compared to our other competitors or other protocols or interop standards out there, all it does is it pretty much creates a sexier version of a quote unquote omni-chain token. So if, I don't know, like Pepe was omni-chain, all they're doing is creating an interoperability standard for that, and they're doing custody and mint or some mint and burn function across all those different chains. But the token still needs to have a liquidity pool of that token on each of those chains, and all those liquidity pools are different for every single chain or every single DEX that's on different chains. So you never end up really getting the same price or the same performance as you would from doing it like on Zeta Chain.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, so that example, I can swap native Bitcoin for ETH, and uh, have immediate settlement. Um, I can also hold ZRC20 Bitcoin and other assets on ZetaChain and do stuff with that. And I have a claim on the real thing on Bitcoin, for example. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you and if these dApps, the dApps I talked about previously, deploy these contracts once, you don't even have to interact with ZRC20 assets. You're completely using it natively. ZRC20 assets are the ones that are under the hood. It's purely for I like to call it accounting purposes. But if you deploy these apps like Beam or even Amana, from what we see, you don't actually see ZRC20 tokens. Everything you deal with is completely native tokens from whatever chain you come from.
Very cool. And a reminder for people listening, Beam is a cross-chain DEX on ZetaChain. Um, if you're a user in Zeta Hub, which is like ZetaChain's app marketplace, you can try out these apps and earn Zeta and level up XP, which is your loyalty on ZetaChain. So check that out. We just crossed 500,000 monthly users on Zeta Hub. And then Amana is another developer on ZetaChain building a yield aggregator. So from any chain, you can deposit native assets into yield apps across Ethereum and Solana and BNB chain, all from one place. Okay. Um, so we talk a lot about Bitcoin access, Bitcoin interoperability. How does ZetaChain connect Bitcoin? Why does that matter? How is it even possible? Would love to get your insights, Alex.
Yeah, so I would like to preface this by the Bitcoin ecosystem, I think, is a lot more than $1 trillion. Um, Most of the current solutions right now with native Bitcoin is just completely wrapped. It's a completely centralized custodial function where a user has to deposit native Bitcoin, but then they mint out a wrapped version that they have to use across different chains. And oftentimes, this custodial providers or custody methods are often very centralized. So if you look at some of the other most popular L2 Bitcoin L2 products or chains that are currently out there, it's actually completely EVM. They may say that they're a sidechain or a rollup, but I actually completely disagree. They're completely EVM. All the users are doing is just completely locking up their native Bitcoin. Maybe it's a couple whales that are locking up their native Bitcoin into a centralized multi-sig wallet, minting out wrapped Bitcoin, and then you're using EVM assets with a wrapped ERC version of a Bitcoin. Yeah, it doesn't sound like real Bitcoin to me. Um, so the way that ZetaChain does it with native Bitcoin is we instead of having like this 3 out of 5 multi-sig whatever, we use MPC TSS. So the way that we do it is we have a simple address on Bitcoin, and any user can deposit into that address, and it calls a smart contract on ZetaChain to manipulate that asset that was deposited into Bitcoin address that we hold, the TSS address. So in the example case of, let's say, user swapping native Bitcoin, how we do it is the user connects their native Bitcoin, and if they want to swap it into ETH, let's say they want to swap one Bitcoin into ETH, that one Bitcoin gets deposited into the ZetaChain Bitcoin TSS address. That issues out the ZRC20 version that swaps into the ETH pool, and then in one click, the user receives that native ETH back in their EVM wallet. So it's all completely using native Bitcoin. The user does not have to use any ERC20 version of Bitcoin or a wrapped version of Bitcoin to use these apps on ZetaChain.
Amazing. And this is part of the big utility play for BNB chain, which is being able to access assets and dApps and innovations and other ecosystems, including directly on Bitcoin. So we talk more about that in the ZetaChain introduction article, which is pinned on our Binance Square uh, profile. You can learn more. There's a question here from D. Bemed about staking Zeta. Could you talk about um, like high level architecture of ZetaChain, like Cosmos based, and how that works?
Yeah, so we're proof of stake, Comet BFT consensus, just like majority of all the proof of stake chains out there. Yeah, you can stake into our validators to earn some rewards to secure the network. It's as simple as that.
Cool. Um, our leader on the developer experience side was a big contributor to creating Cosmos Tendermint, which is used by a lot of the biggest chains in the world. So, fun fact. What else? Some Zeta love from Hamorni in the chat. We love you too. Thanks for your support. Vote for Zeta on the Binance Vote to List campaign. Either way, we're gonna still keep building with BNB chain. We've been building for like 4 years, from testnet to day one mainnet supporting BNB chain. And yes, Brayon, let me bring you to the stage. Hey, Brayon, go for it.
Thank you. Thank you. How do you foresee ZetaChain overcoming?
That last part broke up. How do you see ZetaChain overcoming? I think we lost you, Brian. Okay.
Brian, you there?
Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, we missed
So here's my
the
question.
second part.
How do you
It's happening again.
Yeah, Brian, maybe type it in the chat. Try typing it out in the chat, and we'll get to your question. Thanks so much. Yeah, how do you foresee ZetaChain overcoming the current limitations in DeFi, and what is the vision for it? Thank you for your question.
Yeah, so I think the answer here is pretty simple. We try to focus on these core apps that are being built. So these are the apps that enable that one-click product UI UX where a user deposits any asset from any network, and they can use any asset from any network besides depositing, withdrawing, swapping, etc. So some of the apps that we built are something like BitSmiley, where a user can deposit native Bitcoin to mint out BitUSD on ZetaChain. So I think a lot of the apps and the core apps that are being built on ZetaChain will be quite competitive to existing DeFi applications that are currently out there. That are siloed by liquidity, siloed by each ecosystem, where it's completely the same functions. you're pretty much just swapping the same rat versions of native assets and swapping USDC. There's actually nothing new to it. There's no incentive, and there's no real it's a very intense competition across all the L1s and L2s that are currently launching right now, to gather these users when the current DeFi use cases are still all the same across every single one of those chains. ZetaChain is the only chain that's currently out there that offers something new. So being able to deposit native Bitcoin, borrow USDC on ETH in one single click, swapping from native Bitcoin to another chain on another asset in one single click. Um, Depositing into any protocol on any chain from any asset in one single click. So a lot of these are focused on the product UI UX as well as for that single click end user experience.
Very good. Yeah, and my 2 cents, I mean, if you're building any sort of app, DeFi, uh, you want to be able to access users and liquidity on all chains right from the start. And the current limitation right now is that um, if you deploy on Ethereum, but you want access to Solana, for example, you have to program in a new language and maintain your app and infrastructure on Solana. Um, so there's a lot more overhead. And then on global financial systems, I think we're starting to see all institutions starting to come on chain. I think that will take more time, but Bitcoin ETF approval and all of the headlines about other tokens uh, being able to access from the public is happening. And same thing, if you're an institution, you want access to real native Bitcoin, and you want to be able to access all of Web3 users. And so we're positioning ourselves to support these big institutions coming to Web3.
Yes, sir.
Yep. And there's another question about ZetaChain consensus mechanism, ensuring interoperability across blockchains. Yeah, so cross-chain historically is riskier. In fact, much of the exploits that we've seen in the past couple years have been through these cross-chain bridges and trying to send data and value between blockchains. Um, so security is super important. Uh, Alex, you want to talk about the way ZetaChain observes other blockchains and it writes to other blockchains?
Yeah, we have something called TSS, MPC TSS. It's pretty much a single address deployed on all the chains that we're connected on. So Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, other major EVMs. So the users are depositing into those custody addresses. That all of our observer signers are a subset of validators that have this private key for all these custody addresses completely fragmented across all these different subset of validators. So every time a user deposits into that TSS address, it calls a smart contract on ZetaChain to manipulate it. So if I deposit one Bitcoin into that Bitcoin TSS address, it pretty much calls a smart contract on ZetaChain that says, hey, a user deposited one Bitcoin into that TSS address, do something with it. And whatever function action that is, it'll do it. So ZetaChain will process that. So if that one Bitcoin was for a swap, it'll swap into whatever and such. But overall consensus mechanism, it's very simple. Proof of stake, common BFT, yeah, just like any other major proof of stake chain out there.
Nice. And yeah, I shared the docs in the channel if you want to read more about these observer signers and the threshold signature scheme that Alex is talking about. Thanks for your support, Brayon. Thanks, D. Bimed. You guys have any other questions about ZetaChain, or feel free to request speakership or ask in the chat. We're also going to collab more with Binance Square creators. We're talking to Crypto Revolution Masters at the top of the hour, if you want to join that session. And then tomorrow we're going to talk more about ZetaChain developer experience with other contributors. Cool. Maybe we'll do one more question, Alex, and then we can wrap up. I guess like general outlook on crypto industry in 2025. There's been a lot of news from the US this past week about tariffs, and the markets are reacting in a pretty volatile way. Um, Not asking you, where's crypto price going for Bitcoin and stuff, but just generally, any thoughts on the space or like hot trends that you see on the horizon?
Absolutely. I think we needed this. I think we needed a bear market a little bit, just for things to settle down, for all the hype to go away, all the
Short
grifters to go
term.
away a little bit. Um, yeah, all the grifters to go away a little bit and just focus on building. A lot of these chains are really going to find product market fit during this time. A lot of chains are going to have to figure out some strategy internally as well. Even these dApps as well, and how they can compete for users, how they can compete to get some of these users active into their chain as well. We've always said this, but as long as you have value add, it's relatively more simple for you to compete. If you don't have value add in this space, whether you're a dApp developer or even from a chain perspective, you're not going to be able to compete. I think that's the harsh reality of it. There's too many things out there, too many apps, too many DeFi protocols that do the same thing, too many stable coins that do the same thing, too many chains that do the same thing. So during this bear market and coming markets as well, a lot of that's going to change.
Okay, back to fundamentals, um, which we've been doing for a few years. Uh, Play into the trends, the AI agents and DeSci and whatever is popular next week, but the underlying mission of ZetaChain, building the universal blockchain, connecting BNB chain, Bitcoin, Solana, all of the important ecosystems, that hasn't changed, and making the user experience, the developer experience a whole lot better. Um, cool. Go to the moon, ZetaChain. Thanks, Esprit. Um, any last minute questions, guys? Otherwise, I think we'll wrap it up here. Alex, any last minute words?
No, no last minute words. I think I went on a lot.
All good stuff. Yeah, this is exciting. Our first Binance Square uh, session. I remember doing the first ZetaChain one 3 years ago on Twitter. So we want to do more of these and collab more with Binance users and creators. So yeah, catch us at the top of the hour. We're talking to Crypto Revolution. And then tomorrow we have more sessions planned. So keep an eye on our profile, and we appreciate everyone's support. And thanks, Alex.
No, thank you. See you later. Bye
All
bye,
right,
everyone.
ending it here. Cheers, everyone. Bye.